You know the story of Noah and the flood. But the true miracle isn't the survival of life, it's the impossible engineering feat that made it all possible. Scripture gives us monumental dimensions: 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. But it contains no blueprints, no diagrams, no instructions. How do you build a ship the size of a modern cargo vessel, centuries before the invention of the crane, the nail, or the steam engine? Noah's task wasn't just carpentry, it was a decades-long war against physics, demanding a radical new approach to construction. The first, quiet battle began on the land. Noah first had to solve the problem of the foundation. A structure this vast, almost 500 feet long, cannot be built just anywhere. It demands a ground that is perfectly flat, immensely firm, and capable of resisting the immense, localized weight of the entire ark skeleton before it ever touches water. The world before the flood was defined by extreme heat and intense, choking dust. There was no rain, only a morning mist that quickly evaporated, leaving the air dry and heavy. Noah had to find a location close enough to the immense forest needed for timber, yet far enough from unstable slopes. He spent months leveling, digging, and hardening the earth, essentially creating a colossal, reinforced dry dock. While he worked, the neighbors merely laughed, scoffing at a man preparing a harbor in the middle of a desert valley. They saw madness. Noah saw the divine mandate. Once the ground was prepared, the real physical labor began. The ark required literally thousands of massive cypress trees, timbers that had taken centuries to grow and weighed many tons each. Felling these giants was a terrifying, backbreaking process. The only tool was the bronze axe, which dulled quickly. Hours of precise, repeated strikes were needed just to create a deep notch in a single trunk. Noah and his 3 sons likely worked in pairs, alternating blows to maintain a rhythm of brute force and endurance. The moment of the tree's fall was the most dangerous, requiring ropes and calculated wedges to ensure the multi-ton behemoth didn't crash down and destroy itself, or them. But felling the trees was only half the battle. How do you move a multi-ton log, a trunk the length of a bus, for miles across uneven terrain without wheels? Noah's solution was the same genius used by ancient civilizations thousands of miles away, the wooden roller system. Smaller, thinner logs were placed in a continuous line beneath the massive trunk. Using thick ropes, the men pulled the giant forward. As the log rolled over the cylinders, the men retrieved the rollers from the rear and frantically placed them at the front, repeating the process over and over. This worked, but it was incredibly slow and dangerous. A poorly prepared path or a single hidden stone could send the entire log careening downhill, crushing anyone in its path. For this reason, Noah had to dedicate weeks simply to clearing and leveling specific trails, making sure every yard of path was stable enough for this desperate haul. Even with the help of likely hired local laborers, every log that reached the construction site represented entire days of effort under the relentless, dust-filled sun. The transition from a stack of timber to a vessel began with the single most important component, the keel. The ark's spine had to be 450 feet long. To achieve this impossible length, Noah had to perfectly join multiple massive beams end to end. He used complex male and female joints, reinforced with immense hardwood pegs, hammered deep into the wood to lock the pieces with surgical precision. If this main line cracked or warped, the entire ship would twist and fail. Next came the massive ribs, the curved bones that shaped the hull. You cannot simply chop wood to form a curve. It must be bent. Without modern technology, Noah relied on a subtle but essential technique: steam and controlled heat. The wood was softened by controlled fires and damp fibers, slowly coaxed into the required curve, secured in simple molds, and allowed to cool and harden. Any mistake meant the loss of weeks of labor, but the true genius lay in the structure that made the ark non-deformable on turbulent waters: diagonal reinforcements. Ancient builders intuitively knew that the triangle is the strongest shape in geometry. It is the only structure that remains rigid, refusing to deform even under extreme pressure. The interior of the ark was not just a simple skeleton, it was a complex network of interlocked wood with diagonal bracing, transforming the immense hull into a veritable floating fortress, capable of withstanding forces no other ship had ever encountered. With the frame complete, the moment of truth arrived, sealing the hull. God's instructions were precise: you shall pitch it inside and out. This double coating was critical. External pitch alone would not be enough. Invisible seams would allow moisture to creep in, causing the wood to rot from the inside. Pitch was a toxic, scalding paste made of boiled tree resin and thick earth substances. Boiling this mixture under the already suffocating heat was excruciating. But the hardest part was the internal application. Workers were forced to labor inside the ark's cavernous chambers, where the dense, black fumes accumulated quickly, causing dizziness and burning skin. They had to work in short shifts, apply a layer, retreat for air, and return, for weeks, perhaps months, to create the successive, flawless layers needed for an absolute seal. The work was exhausting, but the stakes were ultimate. Without this seal, the ark would simply become a gigantic wooden coffin. The ark was now an immense, sealed box. The final challenge was turning it into a livable environment for thousands of creatures for a year. The solution lay in the internal architecture of 3 levels and countless compartments, or nests, as the Hebrew text describes them. Noah had to implement perfect weight distribution. The largest, heaviest animals were housed on the bottom deck to create a low center of gravity. Medium and smaller animals were placed higher up. But the most pressing problem was sanitation. A year's worth of waste would quickly create a toxic, disease-ridden environment. Noah likely designed the floors with a slight incline, utilizing small, carved channels to direct liquids toward specific, low-side openings, creating a simple but necessary drainage system once the ark was afloat. Furthermore, without rain, the constant heat and animal density created a ventilation crisis. Noah had to create strategic, protected side openings that allowed air to circulate while keeping the elements out, ensuring oxygen levels remained viable. The very last structural challenge was the door. It had to be monumental to allow creatures like giraffes and elephants to enter, but a massive opening created a massive weak point in the wall. The door was set on the side, an engineering choice that allowed the surrounding beams to distribute pressure far better than the ends of the Arkansas. Noah had to reinforce the entire surrounding area with incredibly thick, locked beams. And since the door would never be opened until after the journey, it had to be sealed absolutely. He likely used pitch-soaked vegetable fibers as a primitive, compressible gasket between the door and the frame. When the colossal vessel finally stood complete, the years of backbreaking labor were done. The final act was a miracle no human could control. Suddenly, without being called or directed, the animals began to appear on their own. They arrived in pairs, lions walking peacefully beside lambs, obeying a silent, supernatural command. No hunting, no chasing, just a quiet, converging march. One by one, they filed through the colossal door and went straight to their designated compartments, as if they already knew their place. When the last animal, and the last of Noah's family, was inside, the event written from the beginning took place. The door closed, not by the arm of a man, but by the divine touch. God sealed the entrance, shutting the old world out and protecting the 8 people and the creatures that would become the future of the earth. The impossible project was now ready for its ultimate test.